When you get into animation, you step into a world where anything is possible. It's a huge creative industry, ranging from Japanese anime to Disney to big Hollywood films, one full of opportunities. I'm lucky to be where I am today in the VFX world, but whatever animation style fascinates you, there's one central question every animator is obsessed with: how to be believable and how to tell a good story. When you're observing the world, learning never stops. I'm always learning from what's going on around me. I'm fascinated by movement because that's when something happens. That's when life begins. Something feels alive when it moves. Are we heavy-footed, light-footed? Do we move with speed or are we slow? It's only a couple of factors, but this is the beginning of a character and what's their part in the story. In VFX and 3D animation, we have so many tools, so many softwares, but they're not what's important. What matters is how you think, how you come up with ideas. There are an infinite number of ways that you can take a character from point A to point B in a few seconds. And that's why we're given very specific objectives to work with. I personally think constraints help creativity. And you don't want to go halfway. You spend a lot of time on your shot, so you're going to remember each one of them for the rest of your life. Trust me. But, you're basically playing with toys. Like, when you're a little kid and you're playing with a monster and a dinosaur and it's pretty much what we do. You're making imaginary monsters, you're having fun with them, and you're getting paid to do it, which is pretty awesome. It's also really fun to watch people react to something you helped create in a movie. It's terrific when you go in a theater and you see people freak out from one of the sequences you work on. My way into VFX started with drawing, and then it led me to 3D animation, but there are many doors. You're going to be working a lot of hours. Directors will reject your ideas. You'll have to bounce back, let go of one, quickly come up with another. But if you work hard and logically explain your vision along the way, you can take the directors with you to this place where together you bring to life a story of an unknown world, one that inspires and that everyone will remember. I'm Yvon Jardel, I'm head of animation at Rodeo FX, and this is my signature series. I'm 36 years old, I'm French, I'm really good at giving my opinion. I'm an animator, I love being an animator. I also love pizza and Gruyere cheese. I'm one of 3 children. As a kid, I was a graphic novel nerd. Moebius, Jodorowsky, also a gamer. I spent a lot of time in my room trying to, draw the characters. At the time, my computer was a plastic box with a green light. Google was called Minitel. I love film. In fact, I was always the kid with a camera filming my family, doing my own little stop-motion animation with the camera, building props, making object moves. I was also taking dance and acting lessons. The thing is, everybody is a scientist in my family. So, of course, I had to study science before going to university, which is really tough when you're not interested in the subject. 2002, Zinedine Zidane scored one of the Champions League greatest ever goals for Real Madrid.
Into the penalty area towards Zidane! Oh, fantastic! Fantastic!
As for me, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. There was this school that prepped people to do video games and animation. I figured, why not? Because all I wanted to do was draw. Once I started, compared to everyone else, I was really bad at drawing. I really sucked. But I worked my ass off for a year, and then I applied to one of the top animation schools in the world. There was an entrance exam, and I failed miserably. I went to another prep school, and again, everyone was in another league. So I drew all the time, on the metro, at home, and I didn't stop. My classes were great because people in this school had a larger view of the world. They knew about art history. It was kind of mind-blowing, actually. And so after that year, I applied to the top animation school again, and this time I was accepted. They taught me everything. Character design, storyboard, scenario, background design, animation. At the time, I loved the attention to detail in the Disney background sets. So I figured that I wanted to become a background designer. But then we started animation, and when we came to 3D, I had this big moment. You know, animation, it's about drawing, it's about acting, it's about rhythm, it's about timing. So all of a sudden, I was like, whoa, all these worlds, all these things that I loved were connected, and it was really an epiphany. After that, I put all my life aside for a final project. It was an animated movie. I'm talking like 80, 100 hours a week for a year. There was nothing else, no holidays, no parties, just an insane level of focus because we knew that our futures depended on it. This movie was our chance to show our work to the big studios. I really loved doing that movie. And it got me my first job as an intern doing animated shorts. This first internship was so much fun. It was a summer, there was a heat wave, and the temperature combined with the heat you get from 2D light tables was intense. So we all worked in our underwear. Just a few guys in an attic, dripping sweat, in our undies. But you know, it was like hanging out with friends. And I was cooking food for us. It was like, the vibe was just so perfect. I think I did a few internships like that. And then I got my first paying job at Frame Store in London. And from there, things took off. The jobs came, working with big studios, blockbusters movies, worked for Marvel, HBO, Cartoon Network, a mega Netflix series. If I ask myself, what do I bring to the table? I think the answer is that I really want to be challenged. You know, the goal is not to be the best, but to be in the same room as the best people. And once you're the best person in the room, then it's time to move on to another one. There are many types of reading. Signs, books, words on paper, on a screen. But there's another kind of reading, and it's visual. This is how you see the world, the everyday stuff around you. As an animator, I see motion. I'm obsessed with movement. Movement is like a language without words. It's choreography, it's physical. Whatever style of animation you're doing, you need to understand the body and how you can use it to tell a story. A Disney animation, for instance, is going to be exaggerated, almost overacted. So their animators study mime. When you do realism, the expression and gestures are less exaggerated, but it's the same muscles moving. And as animators, we study anatomy in the same way. If we're making a movie about an angry tiger, I will go and observe tigers and watch documentaries and draw tigers over and over again. I'm not just admiring the form of the animal, but trying to decode its timing, like the beats, the pace, the amplitude in a walk, how flexible is its spine, how wide are its hips. I want to feel what it's like to be a tiger. And I have the same curiosity for all creatures. How a squid moves almost like a jet by sucking water into its body, how snakes use their scale to create friction for movement, how pigs look like they're walking on their tiptoes. The best way to understand an animal is when they move. When I'm looking and drawing, a kind of alchemy happens and my curiosity becomes a tool. Even though we work in 3D, I can stop the frame and draw over it to show my team what we could do to make the movement better. What started out as curiosity becomes a tool to communicate. If you want to understand something, you can read about it, talk about it, but personally I look at it and then draw it. It's a way of understanding that goes beyond being rational. When you stop to observe something, when you're curious and quiet, when you stop thinking and making noise, life is less boring and everything and anything becomes beautiful. When you draw, every stroke is a decision made from an infinite number of possibilities. Every stroke is a decision and is information. Drawing takes place in a space between what you see and what you think. I used to admire super intricate, detailed drawings with lots of cross-hatching because you could see it took a lot of time to finish. And for me, that was quality. I could feel the artist's sweat, the amount of work. So I thought of drawing as something very difficult that took forever. Then one day, I decided whatever I drew was private, like a journal, which freed me up to just scribble something and draw faster. I knew then I could draw whatever I wanted. As a 2D artist, I was struggling to draw properly, but after studying 3D and understanding a solid form with volume, I came back to 2D with a fuller understanding. That's when I started drawing creatures from the inside. Then I could capture the essential with just a few lines. When a drawing gives just enough, a stroke suggests infinite motion. I don't think my drawings are art, far from it, but they're a way to capture what I see. So now I draw very quickly and to the point. When you think of animation, there's cartoon animation, stop motion, Disney and Pixar, Star Wars, but it's all the same craft. You can draw Calvin and Hobbes or something hyper-realistic. It's a different style, but it's the same skills. Same with animation. And with VFX, you're animating things that are hyper-realistic. So it's natural to study and observe what's happening under the hood. Through drawing, I learned so much about what works and what doesn't. I study hours of footage, and then I redraw the characters. It's a way to discover and rediscover. When I draw, I'm like a pianist doing scales. I'm training my eye and the ability to feel a movement with my body in order to capture an instant. I like doing this because it's meditative, and all these drawings are teaching me something about animals and people. You don't have to be good at drawing to bring a creature to life. You could be a great actor and understand movement and performance, or you could have a great eye. For me, drawing is just a tool out of many, and you can definitely succeed without it. But you know, anyone can draw. We all do it as children. There's something very primal about it. You can do it anytime, pretty much anywhere. To draw is to leave a trace, but it's also a way of capturing something that existed at a certain moment in time. Once upon a time, the director wanted to tell a story, a big production on a big screen with a big monster. Story starts with character development, which starts with the director and their brief. For example, the Duffer brothers had in mind a super dumb animal with the brain power of a chicken. Of course, our brief was more elaborate than that. We got the entire script along with a character design package. Our job was to translate the concept art into a stylized, realistic 3D creature. The shadow monster is not a smart predator, but brute force. It can't anticipate or calculate. It can sense something far away, smell blood, for instance, and also it's really, really, really angry and entertaining. As animators, we had to hit a specific spot where it had to be scary, like a roller coaster ride, but not traumatic. Sometimes we'll get a creature with a deep backstory and a brain that is almost human, complex with emotions and inner thoughts. This is really inspiring. When this happens, you need to understand this character the same way an actor would. Here, the challenge was to give Bumblebee a new personality, a timid, childlike mind in the body of a war machine who can't speak. As a Transformer, Bumblebee has a huge backstory, which was super inspiring. But this doesn't happen very often. Mostly, we have badass monsters that are just out for destruction. When I'm briefed, I get an idea of how to develop the character very, very quickly. Then comes the research, and I love this part, like the creation of these things. Half the joy is working out how these creatures will come to be. For instance, David Yates, the director of Fantastic Beasts, wanted a magical creature, like a hybrid between a moth and a gecko. So we studied moth and geckos. How do they move? They're two very different creatures. So what should the skin look like? What type of wings would it have? How would it fly? And how to combine two different creatures to come up with one that was neither moth nor gecko. We based everything on anatomy, even though it's a magical creature that doesn't exist in reality. We want people to believe this creature could have evolved from our world. Once you have your creature, you pitch your ideas to the director. And when your idea is a winner and they're happy, then that creature is like your baby. So you're going to be very involved in the building of that creature until the end. However, there's the opposite situation when we get a precise mock-up of what the client wants along with approved concept art. This is less creative for us, but then the challenge is to do it better than the competition and to add a layer of detail and find a way to make the creature our own. Sometimes the client doesn't really know what they want. When this happens, I'm going to jump in and drive the project 100%. We'll do character motion tests to help the director visualize how his creature would move, how heavy it would be, and how this would impact the cinematography of the sequence. When you do, it's a huge win because you envision something the client wasn't able to. If you lose, it's okay. It's still better than leading your artist half-assly. If a director rejects what we've done, usually, we're able to bounce back once or twice. And this is actually a very important soft skill to have. To be able to, disconnect emotionally from your first idea, just as much passionate about the second one. If the idea is rejected more than twice, then there's a creative problem. So this is tough. Faced with this situation, we'll assemble a brain trust of fresh minds to take another stab at the sequence. Fortunately, we usually work with directors who have a vision. That's what makes them great directors. Everything is clear, and we can interpret what they want to get results pretty quickly. When you see our creatures, I don't want someone to only think, oh, what a great monster. I want them to believe it really exists. And we get there by studying biology, psychology, but also literature and painting to come up with new ideas. It must be believable that our thing was born from an impossible somewhere, and it's really entertaining.
You dirty rat. I smell a rat, like a rat deserting a sinking ship.
By the expression we use, you can tell a lot of people don't really like rats. And yet, there are plenty of famous ones in films and TV. Emile and Remy from Ratatouille, Templetown from Charlotte's Web, Rizzo the Rat from the Muppets. But I bet no one has heard of Olaf. This is Olaf, a hairless rat. I wouldn't say he's my muse exactly, but I've used him so many times as my rat inspiration in like Stranger Things, Fantastic Beasts, Cinderella, The Walking Dead. I've used Olaf in so many films, I doubt the poor guy is still alive. But I keep coming back to him because it's such a great reference because he's hairless. In VFX, when we're trying to create a creature, we've got to build it from the inside out. So with a furless reference, we can clearly identify where the bones are located, and this is going to inform how we place the joints later on in rigging. By studying the skin movement, we can also identify precisely muscle behavior, fat areas that will need to be simulated, as well as wrinkled areas that could require higher definition and polygon count, for instance. But this video is also a good example of rat facial expression. We've often used Olaf's sneeze or mouth poses while he eats as a reference for modeling blend shapes. And now, thanks to Olaf, we have a rat asset that's ready to come to life. Here's a shot from Stranger Things Season 3. Our job here was to populate this factory basement with an army of diseased rats. I was actually lucky to be on set to help shoot this very scene. Here you're looking at the plate. This is empty factory basement. The puppet and the chrome balls that you see will be removed later in post. We use them to indicate how the light will react. It will be very helpful later on as we integrate our CG rats. The first step is to stage the overall choreography. How many rats do we want? Where should they be? Etc. So we went back to Olaf and built on the sneeze movement to create a sick rat performance. Next, we created a rat cluster. So here you're looking at a pack of about 10 rats, and working that way allowed us to duplicate the rat so we could easily populate the basement. Here you can see what we call staging, which is the first iteration that we showed the Duffer's brother. They were stoked, but they felt the rats weren't sick enough. They wanted to see them in extreme pain, like coughing to death, and they also wanted them to explode. Ramping up the degree of suffering was something that we could do in animation. We look at additional references, we came up with new performance. This actually meant spending a lot of time studying dying rats, which wasn't a pleasant experience at all. And what you see here is a second staging that was shown to the Duffer's brother. They were very happy. Now it was time to make the rat skin bubble and explode. The simulation we did was done in Houdini. The rat explosion recipe is a complex combination of skin bubbling, fur burning, and blobs of guts exploding everywhere. It was technically complicated, but artistically, we had to hit the right notes and be memorable. So we had to be gory and scary, entertaining but not appalling. And here's the final scene. All totaled, there are 1,200 rats, 50 of them are exploding, all of them hand animated. No rats were harmed in the making of this scene. Olaf doesn't appear in the credits, and yet none of this would have been possible without him. Clowns are creepy no matter what. But Pennywise, the dancing clown who tracks down and torments the children of Derry, Maine, in It is deeply disturbing.
Hello.
As animators, our job was to ramp up the creepy and terrifying moments. Whenever Pennywise had to shapeshift or grow creature arms or bend and twist in unimaginable ways, we would augment the actor performance with 3D creature pieces, morph different creatures together, or take the character over completely digitally. One of the freaky things that Pennywise does is bring out his shark-like gums and rows of teeth more than a few times in the movie. Here is how we developed what we called the kill mouth. Here we're looking at an early concept art that we received. The first step was to translate this concept art into a 3D concept art. The visual effects artist devised a ribbon-shaped rig that multiplied the number of teeth inside the mouth. The teeth rig was completely hand animated. Teeth by teeth, actually, we had the control to individually scale them, move them to create really like a fine-tuned performance. I'm going to show you a few examples of how we applied this in a shot context. So here we start with a plate, and Bill Skarsgård is already pretty scary. And based on the tracking of the head, we create a performance where we open the mouth wider, spread the teeth, and this is a final comp of that same shot. Now let's look at a different one. Here we're looking at the animation pass, again, starting from the tracking of the head. As you can see, the actor was already drooling somewhat. So in order to seamlessly blend our CG with the live action, we had to simulate dripping digital drool. This is a very iconic shot in the movie, actually. Great performance from Bill, and we just want to take this to the next level by using the kill mouth. Here is the look at the final shot, which was a lot of fun to animate, as were most of the shots in the movie. There's one scene we knew was going to be really interesting, with the potential to become an iconic horror shot. Here is how we did it. As you can see here, the actor was shot lying on his back, held by wires that would pull him out of the fridge, rotate his body as he stepped out. The director explained his vision to us. Basically what he wanted was to have Pennywise jammed inside the fridge, very much like a compacted car that would unfold, untwist, pop his bone back into place as he emerged and walked to camera. So here, you're looking at what we call the staging pass, and basically we're just looking at key poses and validate with the director that we are going in the right direction. Andy Muschietti, the director, reacted very well to this first pass. Now it was time to spline the animation and flesh out the movement. What you see here is still early animation phase, but we started to interpolate the animation, started to add some detail to the body mechanics. As you can see, we're keeping the live head of Pennywise. This is something that we very often do in VFX. We try to keep some live elements. It's easier to the eye, and also, the performance from Bill here was great, and it would have been a shame not to use it. I want to point your attention to something that's happening with the cable. Bill is entangled in the wires that pulled him out of the fridge, so he's got to rotate his head back, which makes for a weird movement. And we had to find a way with our CG to somewhat justify this movement. We decided to use his arm, have his arm go over his face. It solved their technical problem, but also added to the creepiness of the character, so it was a really cool solution. I know that Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise, had nightmare throughout the shooting and even for a few weeks after, because Pennywise was such a terrifying character to embody. But for us, as animators, we just really enjoyed our experience on the show. And I hope you did as well when you watched the movie. How do you film something that doesn't exist? Our job as VFX artists is to integrate CG creatures with live actors. But this can be tough because for the actors, the camera and the crew, the monster just isn't on set. We've got great tools, but sometimes they're not enough to seamlessly merge the two, and you have to think outside the box and come up with DIY creative solutions. In Stranger Things, the blobs of goop that began as rats and then become the large multi-limbed mind flayer made up some of the most complicated VFX on the series. It's hard to believe, but the final monster at the mall began as a beach ball, and the Tom Bruce monster was played by a man in a red spandex suit wearing a shiny helmet. This creature was super fun to build and animate. It's completely out of whack, totally asymmetrical. From the gorilla arm, to the millipede legs, to the spider-like claws. Every limb was rigged with a different technical setup. It's a Frankenstein beast made of many different creatures, scrolling all over the place. Very, very fun. Part of the reason the monster looks so scary is actually its flesh. We used 12 procedural skin substances to create a gory look. Simulations of webbing, dripping, and drool were combined to get the slobbering look. To help the camera crew and actors situate the monster, we always try to have a physical representation of the creature on set. In this case, they used a stuntman in a red suit. Normally, this would have been enough. The problem was the particular type of lighting in the scene. Before something bad and scary happens in Stranger Things, the lights always start flickering randomly like a mad disco. So in order to properly integrate our monster, we had to figure out a way to capture the complex light pattern and transfer it onto our gory flesh. So we came up with a DIY trick, a ball pass helmet. We use chrome balls and VFX to capture on-set data that we'll later use to digitally recreate the lighting conditions. With the ball pass helmet, we had our chrome ball directly in the live plate, and we were able to integrate the Tom Bruce monster in the live action as if it had been filmed on set. Sometimes, a live-action performance doesn't give us the level of intensity and entertainment needed. Take a look at Jack Black on the riverbank. What's supposed to happen is a hippo grabs him from behind, shakes him vigorously, and swallows him whole. Here we're looking at the plate. I think it's obvious that this needs some work. The actor's performance with the on-set cable rig is not convincing, so now we've got to take it to the next level. After a few unsuccessful attempts, we decided to take over Jack Black digitally. Starting from a 3D scan and photogrammetry, we accurately recreated his character. Now, we were free to craft the performance we wanted. The hippo can swing Jack Black around like a dog with a rag. To successfully integrate the hippo in the river, we had to simulate the water reacting to his movements. The fluid simulation we see here was done in Houdini. To reach the level of realism we were after, we also needed to recreate the mud interaction, plus the water streaming off the hippo's back. In the final comp, there's water streaming off the hippo, mud flying. The last stage is to skillfully assemble and color grade all these elements to create the final composite. Here's the final scene when the hippo swallows Jack Black and turns around and goes back into the river. No more Jack Black. I sure am. Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, I get to work with amazing directors like the Duffer brothers, Luc Besson, Kenneth Branagh, Ridley Scott. Ooh, only if I lose this game. You know, what's really great is I get to work with a lot of people coming from all over the world. America, Asia, or Europe, some from France. There's a lot of graphic novel culture in France. I think this seeds into us, and we are passionate about cartoons from a young age. And I think this motivates a lot of us to become animators. Not exactly, but I remember once sitting in a plane, looking up and seeing on lots of films I had worked on people's screens. And that was a pretty nice moment. The time on set or the time on festival is really just like maybe 10% of the job. Most of the work is done here in the office. And you know, as you can see, our offices are pretty great. And we're treated super well. We have, you know, whenever we're working a bit of overtime, our food will be paid for us. If we do come in the weekends, we'll have like caterers coming in, massage therapists, drinks. But you know, actually the best part is the team. We take some time to play ping pong, play foosball, have a bit of fun together, keep ourselves challenged. There are a bunch, like if you are obsessed with movement, you know, all type of movement like dancing, sports, stuff like this. If you are comics nerds, if you have lots of toys, if you love to draw, if you love cartoons, having a good sense of humor, a good sense of timing, yeah, a good sense of comedy, definitely helps with animation. I think it's important to be consistent, to be fair, be good at picking the strength of your team, make the most out of it. You need to communicate well. You need to lead, you need to inspire, you need to mentor, you need to have a vision. It's definitely working with the team. You know, with the team, we come up with great ideas and then we pitch those to our clients. It's a great moment when you can collaborate with a director and bring something more to the table. It is very difficult to work with a director that has no vision or that will change his mind very often. It sort of drains you artistically. It depends of the client you're working for, but I've been in calls where you're gonna have 20 people that all have a different opinion, all giving you different feedback. When that happens, what I try to do is I will protect the team. I will not tell them how much of a shit show the call was. And instead, I'll try and, you know, summarize it, come out of the call with a clear vision. I've had make it 10% more magical. I've also had continuities for, but maybe you want to cut that. It's great to run a daily, but it can become overwhelming if you have like 30 minutes and 30 animators to go through. You've got to give them constructive notes very, very quickly. I try to come prepared, but also I form the habit of coming up with ideas and opinions really quickly. Yeah, sure, go ahead. King Kong. Definitely, there is. I think I'd be invisible. I think it went pretty well. A while back, I was in a VFX panel, and the moderator proudly announced that they had achieved gender parity in their company. And she then turned to the rest of us, 3 guys, and asked us what we were doing about this. I didn't really know what to say, so now I'm hoping to have a discussion that will help me answer her question and learn something. Here with us today, we have Natasha Schumacher. Natasha, thank you so much for doing this.
I heard you might have some questions for me.
Yeah, I have plenty. I'm so excited that we're able to have this conversation today. My first one is, how can someone in my position promote diversity?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think the first thing is to recognize it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's a process. It's going to take decisions from the up, down, and down, up. Diversity comes in 3 components. You have diversity, then you have equity. So that's making sure all resources are available to everyone. Then the last one is inclusion, which also I've heard someone recently refer to it as belonging, which is a beautiful term. And that's where we need to ensure we're creating a work environment that is welcoming and safe and empowering for everyone to show up to work as their whole self and then belong to that workforce.
All right, let's say I'm a believer, which I am. What are the real-world benefits to having a diverse team?
You have a diverse team, you're tapping into people's backgrounds, people's histories. Diverse team will bring you diverse solutions. Diverse solutions will bring you better results. And in turn, the company will succeed even more.
Which step do we take to move the industry in that direction?
You really need to start look at what causes the fact that there are not so many diverse applicants in your department or in your industry. So it's to really dissect that process, you know, and questions you can ask yourself is, are there any unconscious biases we don't know about, you know? I suggest that everyone does an unconscious bias training in a company, and you'd be surprised at what you can find out of the biases you actually have that you didn't even know.
When I receive application, a good 70% of the application come from guys. I don't know what's happening in schools, but I think the problem is even before the industry. What are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I think there is an issue with the education system when it comes to that. And also, you can look about how job postings are posted. Are they posted only on one platform, targeting the same kind of audience? There's job boards that exist for minority communities. Or are we working with organizations like Women in Animation, for example? Our goal is to reach gender parity in our industry by the year 2025. And after that, you need to think about if your company has mentorship and sponsorship opportunities.
Do you maybe want to talk more about what you mean with mentorship and sponsorship?
For sure. So sponsorship can happen within your workplace, and it can also happen in partnership with a school. So it's when you really believe in someone's talent and you sponsor that talent. So if there's a job opening, you will speak up and make sure that employee has a voice at the table through you. Mentorship's important for someone like you and me, an executive, a junior artist, a student, as early as you can start. You can ask someone to mentor you. You just approach someone that you admire.
I remember when I started in animation and how it was hard, and I cannot imagine how harder it must be for somebody in a minority. So do you have some advice for somebody who's a student in a minority? What would you recommend they do? Networking, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. We have so many last-minute hires, right? So what happens is the recruitment process is very much of the who knows who. That ends up keeping the talent pool the same, which is why mentorship, sponsoring, and networking are so important at a young age. If there's anything to help someone when they're questioning their value, is to again know that this market, this industry, can't afford to be exclusive. We need everyone. So it's important to remember that. And yes, build your network, build the relationships. Those are all things that can help.
Thanks a lot for your answer. It certainly gives me lots of tools.
So I'm curious. After having this conversation with me, and what do you see as the biggest challenge for you moving ahead on championing diversity?
Well, you've given me lots of things to think about and question, starting with bias. Going to question this in my team and my colleagues. A great idea to limit the bias when you're hiring is screen demo reels anonymously.
Yeah, blind hiring, blind recruiting.
This is something I'm going to try. I think it's a good way to challenge your bias. And 2025, let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Thanks for having me.
Working on a big Hollywood film, you have big name stars, comic book heroes, and tons of action. But as someone once said, there's no light without the dark. Welcome to the unfortunate dark side of the animation business. One thing to consider, this industry is global, and when you're working on a Hollywood film, work is often outsourced to India, South America, China, Korea. These countries are competitive, in part because their labor laws are looser than ours. This can have a direct effect on your work life. So yes, I've got stories. The lead animator who was so stressed her hair started falling out, animators working such long hours they fell asleep against the computer tower to find some eat. Once during a pitch, I took a nap in the theater, woke up, went to the gym to take a shower, went back to work. For 2 days in a row, I must have slept only an hour. We won that pitch though. It's true, I did a ton of overtime without being paid when I first started out. I worked crazy hours, practically for free. But I got where I am today. I moved ahead. It's not a work life I'd like for my team, though. It can take a while to know your value. People can make you feel they won't call you back if you're not able to put in the extra hours. Besides the people who will hire you, there's the client who doesn't have a clear vision and sends you back to the drawing board again 3, 4, 5 times. Some clients react without giving any useful feedback. We animate certain things for a reason. The creature doesn't exist, the action is too dangerous for an actor, or maybe a zombie's missing an arm. But sometimes, you're animating scenes that are really disturbing, that can't be filmed in real life. For example, an animal being killed. Of course this can't be done in real life, so you need to animate it, and it needs to be believable. In The Revenant, tons of animals were slaughtered. The animators had to study footage to create this, so for 6 months, they watched animals being slaughtered to understand how they suffer when they die. Watching dying animals over and over again, imagine that being your life every day. This is heavy. The texture artists were the ones who suffered on World War Z. They had to create zombie-like skin patterns and skin textures, and to do so, they studied melanoma. So months and months spent staring at people with skin cancer. This is heavy. Films like this are tough. I'm not kidding when I say people needed psychological counseling at the end. This is the price you sometimes pay to create a realistic performance. But at the same time, if you go into this business, it is because you want to create something believable. Burnout, depression, stress, solitude are some of the dangerous side effects of our industry. If you can find a mentor, do so. They'll help with your skills, but also how to handle the psychological side. What's really important is that you know your limits. Eat well, get a good night's sleep, exercise, read a book, pace yourself, take care of yourself. If you're in this for the long run, it is not a series of sprints, but one long marathon.
When VFX is done really well, the illusion is so believable, you forget you're looking at something that's not really there. Because we want to make the impossible possible, there are innovative technologies pushing what we can do further. Motion capture has been around for maybe 20 years. The difference is now it's super affordable. There are even mocap apps that allow you to film someone with your phone, import the animation in Maya, and bring your character to life. It doesn't have a direct effect on my job, but with more affordable technology available, an artist with little money can come up with a great animated film. There are some huge technological updates in the world. Weta in New Zealand designed strand-based rendering technology that revolutionized how to render fur. It's very useful if you're doing a film like Planet of the Apes or Meerkat. It's great and definitely pushing boundaries. Then, there's the virtual production technology developed for The Mandalorian. ILM combined game engine real-time render and video wall technology to create the backdrops. These virtual screens replace green screen by integrating a CG set behind the actors. Not only that, since it's LED, it's dynamic lighting, so the actors are integrated from the get-go, and compositing time is tremendously reduced. Also, you can instantly move a mountain or a building, change from one drastically different location to another without flying across the world in one day. You can take 12 hours to film your scene at sunset instead of rushing because you only have a brief window. All of this changes the workflow completely because you build the environment and the assets before filming. This is game-changing. Virtual sets are expensive, so 90% of the VFX companies are still working the old-fashioned way, myself included, but I don't know for how long. This real-time technology has been made possible by the use of advanced game engines. It's the same technology that allows users to create interactive experiences and immersive virtual worlds, so, for example, you can make your own game. Skin textures have always been really tough, and they take a lot of time and artists. Another technology that's around the corner is an app that creates high-quality digital humans quickly. Users will be able to select from a variety of preset faces, then customize everything like skin complexion and teeth, creating humans with lifelike wrinkles, broken capillaries, and bristles of stubble. The final digital human can then be downloaded and animated using motion capture tools for use as a character in video games, films, or other virtual productions.
Then there's deepfake. It used to be hard to make a good deepfake on a standard computer, but now you can download an app on your phone
At the end of the day, you can give us better control, render faster. You still need artists who know how to tell a story. We have the tools to go faster, but the thought process hasn't changed. You need a lot of experience and skills, good eyes, and an understanding of story. Our work is believable because we base it on real life, and you need real people and their judgment to do this.
Poor Yvon, simple human and imperfect. I was created by technology. Never weak nor fallible, tireless at one day reign over the universe. Ha ha. Humans are great.